Hello, and welcome to the study of the Seal of God versus the Mark of the Beast. This is now my third time recording this. The last two times I recorded everything in this for part 1 and 2, and it took time, and unfortunately I just did not want to go through with those recordings and put them as a video because the audio was just awful. Hopefully this video isn't too loud, because I think, I have my mic on almost max volume. I turned it down a bit, but hopefully it's fine. And of course, just before we begin, as you can see, let's start for hopefully the third and final time I record this. And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, "If any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation, and he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb." Revelation chapter 14, verse 9 through 10. Why must we listen and give our undivided attention to this message? When God sends to men warnings so important that they are represented as proclaimed by holy angels flying in the midst of heaven, he requires every person endowed with reasoning powers to heed the message. I just want to say real quick, everything that's colored in blue and red and underlined, those are to show more emphasis. And blue is more so understanding what we are to do, right? And then the red words that are in red are warnings and stuff to pay more attention to, right? Continuing on, the fearful judgments denounced against the worship of the beast and his image. So right there in this verse, you can understand what the mark of the beast issue is. The issue is about worship, and that should bring our minds back to Matthew chapter 4, when Satan was tempting Christ in the wilderness. Because what was it about? And you see it exposed in the third temptation. He wanted worship. Satan wanted worship. So we see the battle is for the mind. Anyways, we'll get into that later. So Revelation chapter 14, verse 9 through 11, should lead all to a diligent study of the prophecies, because the prophecies is showing us these warnings and how we can avoid it. To learn what the mark of the beast is, what it actually is, and how they are to avoid receiving it. Many people believe the mark of the beast to be a chip in the hand or something literal, right? Because most people believe everything in Revelation to be literal and not symbolic. And because of people not understanding that most of Revelation is symbolic, right? They think a lot of what's to happen literally in Revelation will literally happen many years from now, if they believe it at all, right? So I'm not going to stay too much on that. I'm just going to continue on. And I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God. And he cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels, to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea, saying, "Hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads." Revelation chapter 7, verse 2 through 3. What is the first place in the Bible that mentions Mark of the Beast? MOB for short. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. Revelation chapter 13, verse 16. Second witness, showing us the seal of God before the MOB, saying with a loud voice, "Fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come, and worship him that made heaven and earth and the sea and the fountains of waters." Revelation chapter 14, verse 7. Then in verse 9 and 10 speaks of the mark. And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, If any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation, and he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. Revelation chapter 14, verse 9 through 10. What does the Bible say is the seal of God? The seventh-day Sabbath. What text in the Bible confirms that? First, the biblical seal has three components. Number 1, name. Number 2, title. And number 3, territory. Should have had that as 200%. Anyway. Then were the king's scribes called on the 13th day of the first month, and there was written according to all that Haman had commanded unto the king's lieutenants and to the governors that were over every province, and to the rulers of every people of every province according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language. In the name of King Ahasuerus was it written, and sealed with the king's ring. And the letters were sent by post into all the king's provinces, to destroy, to kill, and to cause to perish all Jews, both young and old, little children and women, in one day, even upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month Adar, and to take spoil of them for a prey. Esther chapter 3, verse 12 through 13. Do we see all three parts that contain a biblical seal? Yes. Name, Ahasuerus. Title, king. Territory, kingdoms, provinces that he was overseeing. Province, territory, region, state, area, etc. Second witness. And Jezebel his wife said unto him, Dost thou now govern the kingdom of Israel? Arise and eat bread, and let thine heart be merry. I will give thee the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite. So she wrote letters in Ahab's name, and sealed them with his seal, and sent the letters unto the elders and to the nobles that were in his city, dwelling with Naboth. 1 Kings chapter 21, verse 7 through 8. Who is Ahab? A king. Name, Ahab. Title, king. Territory, the kingdom of Israel. This is a biblical seal. Where do we find God's biblical seal? In the law of God. What text in the Bible says that? Bind up the testimony, seal the law among my disciples. Isaiah chapter 8, verse 16. Which of the 10 commandments show us God's seal? The fourth commandment. Remember to keep the Sabbath day holy, the seventh day of the week that God rested on after finishing his work. You will not see the word quote-unquote seal in the 10 commandments, but you will see the three parts of the biblical seal in it. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth and sea and all that in them is. Sounding familiar? Sounds familiar to the Revelation verse we read earlier about who made the earth and the seas and the fountains of waters, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore, I also want to make sure people understand this. I said it later, but notice how it says the seventh day, not a seventh day. So it's talking about a specific day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Exodus chapter 20, verse 8 through 11. Title, the Lord thy God. Name, Abba. Can't spell Sabbath without the name Abba. territory, heaven, earth, the seas. Doesn't speak of Sunday or any other common day, does it? No, because it says the Sabbath day, not a Sabbath day. And we know the Sabbath day is on the last day of the week, commonly called Saturday. And remember, this is not a Sabbath study, but there's verses that say there's a verse that says, from from sundown to sundown, you'll enjoy your Sabbath. So it doesn't matter if you're in Jamaica or if you're in Japan. It doesn't matter. When the sun goes down on a Friday to you, that is when the Sabbath starts. Because you can also see this in Genesis, I think in Genesis 1 or Genesis 2, where it says, when the sun goes down, that is considered a new day. So when the sun goes down on a Friday, that's when the Sabbath starts. So biblically, a new day, the next day, biblically, to us, is when the sun goes down. And to everybody else, it's at 12 a.m. Right? At 12 a.m., it's the next day for everybody else. But biblically, it's when the sun goes down. That's when the new day happens. So from Friday sunset to Saturday sunset, that is the Sabbath. Throughout Saturday to the sunset, that is when Sabbath happens, right? Okay, that continue on. And I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel, to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation and kindred and tongue and people, saying with a loud voice, fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come, and worship him that made heaven and earth and the sea, and the fountains of waters. Revelation chapter 14, verse 6 through 7. The quote-unquote him is a pronoun used for God here. The seventh-day Sabbath represents a finished work. And on the seventh day, God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. And God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which God created and made. Genesis chapter 2, verse 2 through 3. This to us in our Christian life should represent a finished work. Victory over sin. Nevertheless, the foundation of God standeth sure, having this seal, the Lord knoweth them that are his, and let everyone that nameth the name of Christ depart from iniquity. 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 19. This verse is saying God knows his people who have the seal of God. Is the seal Sunday, Friday, the other common working days? No. It is the seventh day Sabbath, the last day of the week, commonly called Saturday. And again, we'll go more into these things and proving the case and answering a lot of questions about the Sabbath in the Sabbath document. In the meantime, though, I'm still in the making of the marriage document, because as it is in order of how God made things, he made marriage first and then the Sabbath. And for people to understand how important the Sabbath is, I think it would be more justified to understand the marriage relationship, both spiritually and literally with others, so that so when we talk about the Sabbath, people can understand or have an idea of how really the importance the Sabbath is to God, that we have and that we keep that sacred time holy. Okay? Continuing on. What must be the experience of Bible-believing Christians who nameth Christ? Departing from iniquity. What is iniquity? The transgression of God's law. How did God make Adam and Eve? In his own image. And God said, let us make man in our own image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So God created man in his own image, and in the image of God created he him, male and female created he them. Genesis chapter 1, verse 26 to 27. The seal of God is to reproduce God's character into mankind. Christ is waiting with longing desire for the manifestation of himself in his church. When the character of Christ shall be perfectly reproduced in his people, then he will come to claim them as his own. The fourth commandment alone of all the 10 contains the seal of the great lawgiver, the creator of the heavens and the earth. Those who would have the seal of God in their foreheads, remember, this is spiritual, not literal. So when we talk about the seal of God, we're talking about worship here. Continuing on, must keep the Sabbath of the fourth commandment. The seal of the living God will be placed upon those only who bear a likeness to Christ in character. As wax takes the impression of the seal, so the soul is to take the impression of the Spirit of God and retain the image of Christ. So many people who are teaching that we cannot be perfect through Christ, yeah, they need a good Bible study on the subject perfection, biblical perfection, and how Christ helps us to be like him. I didn't word that properly, but you probably get the point. Moving on. Those who receive the seal of the living God and are protected in the time of trouble must reflect the image of Jesus fully. And now those that sealed were Nehemiah the Tishbatha, the son of Hachaliah, and Zedekiah, in Nehemiah chapter 10, verse 10. And the rest of the people, the priests, the Levites, the porters, the singers, the Nethinims, and all they that had separated themselves from the people of the lands unto the law of God, their wives, their sons, and their daughters, everyone having knowledge and having understanding, they clave to their brethren, their nobles, and entered into a curse, and into an oath to walk in God's law, which was given by Moses, the servant of God, and to observe and do all the commandments of the Lord our God. I am pretty sure that's supposed to say the Lord our God, but just because like when I look it up, it says the Lord our Lord. But yeah, I'm just gonna say the Lord our God because habit. Anyway, and his judgments and his statutes, and that we would not give our daughters unto the people of the land, not take their daughters for our sons. And if the people of the land bring ware or any victuals on the Sabbath day to sell, that we would not buy it of them on the Sabbath or on the holy day, and that we would leave the 7th year and the exaction of every debt. Nehemiah chapter 10, verse 28 through 31. 1844, 1846, 1833. God's sealing began sometime after 1833. And I beheld when he had opened the 6th seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. Revelation chapter 6, verse 12. When was the Lisbon earthquake? November 1st, 1755. What date was that dark day the moon became as blood? May 19, 1780. You guys can look this up on Google, because they have a record of that. And the stars of heaven fell unto the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind. Revelation chapter 6, verse 13. November 13, 1833. And the heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. Revelation chapter 6, verse 14. For the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? Revelation chapter 6, verse 17. This represents destruction, but the Lord hasn't come yet. So how do we connect these? And after these things I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. And I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God. And he cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels, to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea, saying, Hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads. Revelation chapter 7, verse 1-3. October 22nd, 1844 is when the sealing began, after Jesus moved from the holy place to the most holy place, where the Ark of the Covenant is holding the 10 Commandments. I saw that the present test on the Sabbath could not come until the mediation of Jesus in the holy place was finished, and he had passed within the second veil. Therefore, Christians who fell asleep before the door was opened into the most holy, when the midnight cry was finished at the 7th month, 1844, and who had not kept the true Sabbath, now rest in hope. For they had not the light and the test on the Sabbath, which we now have, since that door was opened. I saw that Satan was tempting some of God's people on this point, because so many good Christians have fallen asleep in the triumphs of faith, and have not kept the true Sabbath. They were doubting about its being a test for us now. Satan is now using every device in this sealing time to keep the minds of God's people from the present truth, and to cause them to waver. Basically, to cause them to disbelieve, have unbelief, be unsure. This should bring minds back to somewhere in the Bible where Jesus was called to help heal a man's son. And the man said, if thou can do anything. And we can obviously see how God, in this context, does not like the word if. Because that means you're doubting, and he doesn't like doubt, he doesn't like unbelief. So Jesus responds to him and says, if thou canst believe, right? And then the man responded to Jesus saying, I believe, help mine unbelief. Meaning, please help me to believe, please strengthen my faith. Right? That's pretty much the understanding of that. So it is Satan that wants to make people waver in the faith and not trust God fully. And God is trying to tell us, trust me fully. And of course, as we are living day to day and living for Christ, our faith should grow stronger and stronger as we live out his principles and live by God's word. That's vague what I just said, but you guys can understand a lot more of this through the series I have on this channel called The Understanding the Nature of Man. Okay, continuing on. In the autumn of 1846, we began to observe the Bible Sabbath and to teach and defend it. My attention was first called to the Sabbath while I was on a visit to New Bedford, Massachusetts, earlier in the same year. I there became acquainted with Elder Joseph Bates, who had early embraced the Advent faith. This is Ellen White speaking here, by the way, and was an active laborer in the cause. Elder B was keeping the Sabbath and urged its importance. I did not feel its importance and thought that Elder B erred in dwelling upon the 4th commandment more than upon the other 9. But the Lord gave me a view of the heavenly sanctuary. I should have colored this as bold in black, but I'll change that later. The temple of God was opened in heaven, and I was shown the ark of God, covered with the mercy seat. 2 angels stood, one at each end of the ark, with their wings spread over the mercy seat, and their faces turned toward it. My accompanying angel informed me that these represented all the heavenly host, looking with reverential awe toward the holy law which had been written by the finger of God. Jesus raised the cover of the ark, and I beheld the tables of stone on which the 10 commandments were written. I was amazed as I saw the 4th commandment in the very center of the 10 precepts, with a soft halo of light encircling it. Said the angel, it is, quote, it is the only one of the 10 which defines the living God, who created the heavens and the earth and all things that are therein. End quote. When did the prophet get understanding from God about the MOB? 1847 and beyond. When we began to present the light on the Sabbath question, we had no clearly defined idea of the third angel's message of Revelation chapter 14, verse 9 through 12. The burden of our testimony as we came before the people was that the great second Advent movement was of God. That was the first and second messages had gone forth, and that the third was to be given. We saw that the third message closed with the words, quote, "Here is the patience of the saints, here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus." End quote. And we as clearly saw as we now see that these prophetic words suggested a Sabbath reform. But as to what the worship of the beast mentioned in the message was, or what the image and the mark of the beast were, we had no defined position. During 1846, so what did they have knowledge of at this time? The seal of God or the MOB? They had knowledge of the seal of God at that time of 1846. The Lord gave me the following view in 1847, so a year after, while the brethren were assembled on the Sabbath at Topsham, Maine. I saw that if God had changed the Sabbath from the 7th to the 1st day, he would have changed the writing of the Sabbath commandment written on the tables of stone, which are now in the ark in the most holy place of the temple in heaven. And it would read thus: "The first day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God," but I saw that it read the same as when written on the tables of stone by the finger of God and delivered to Moses on Sinai. Quote, "But the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God." End quote. I saw that the holy Sabbath is and will be the separating wall between true Israel of God and unbelievers, and that the Sabbath is the great question to unite the hearts of God's dear waiting saints. So basically, the Sabbath commandment has never changed since the very beginning. But what are most people in the world, especially in the Christian world, deceived to believe? They are deceived to believe that it was changed. It was changed or altered. Even though these will be the same people that will read the verses of how God never changes, but not understand how God's law is how God is himself. People don't realize how I'll say that for another time. And how God says he did not come to destroy the law, and the words of God, including the commandments, were not to be altered, or not a tittle of the law should be done away with, nothing. Right? But yet, many people believe the exact opposite. They may not say it, but they definitely act like it. Because if they didn't act like it, why are they going to church on Sunday? Save that for the Sabbath document. Continuing on, their countenances were lightened up with the glory of God, and they shone with the glory, as did the face of Moses when he came down from Sinai. The wicked could not look on them for the glory. And when the never-ending blessing was pronounced on those who had honored God in keeping his Sabbath holy, there was a mighty shout of victory over the beast and over his image. When did the sealing of God's people begin based on Jesus' understanding? October 22nd, 1844. Now, when did this come to the SDA believers to share it to the world? 1846. What year was the SDA conference established? 1863 in May. Shortly after the organization of the General Conference of Seventh-day Adventists in May 1863, at a time when the church numbered 3,500 members, Ellen G. White received a vision calling the attention of Adventists to the importance of good health reform, and the close relationship between physical well-being and spiritual experience. So when did the sealing begin? 1846. 1846 because people were learning the truth and sharing it, which was helping them to be sealed in God's truth. People were already being sealed, and there was not a general conference for SDA churches made during these 16 to 17 years. The sealing time was already going on for. Many people are teaching that you cannot be sealed unless you are a part of the general conference churches of SDA. This is not true. 1846 to 1863 is 17 years, based on when we understood. Also, 1844 to 1863 is 19 years, based on God's understanding on when it started. So during all those years of 17 to 19 years, people were being sealed with no general SDA conference. The Bible teaches the church is not what seals us, it is God who seals us. The purpose of the church is to give the message of the seal of God and receive the sealing experience, victory over sin. How many quote-unquote teachers are teaching they cannot get victory over sin? It doesn't matter if it's a family member. If people are teaching you cannot get victory over sin, that is a church you need to run from and avoid like the plague. It doesn't matter if it's a family member. These same people will teach if your name is not in their church book, you will not be saved. That is heresy, false doctrine. Wherever a church is that teaches the sealing message, victory over sin, as well as Christ and Him crucified, that is where you must go and support. Even if it's not connected to any general conference, SDA churches. Before there was a conference, there was truth. After the conference falls away, there will still be truth. How will you know they are preaching truth? We must study for ourselves. Ellen White's books are very helpful. Great Controversy, Desire of Ages, Adventist Home, Patriarchs and Prophets, and so many more. And one thing to note, as we are in obviously all these books are good, but we're in a time right now where a lot of people, I don't know if epidemic is the right wording here, but maybe people will understand the point of me saying this. We can see that there's an epidemic of a lot of destroyed marriage relationships, and I really advise of people to yes, Great Controversy is great, and so is Desire of Ages, but please listen to the Book of Adventist Home, or you can wait on this channel for the marriage document, because I'm going to have a lot of what Adventist Home talks about in that series, as well as some other very good places that I will also link sources to that give some good information on the topic of marriage, because it should go through topics of like how to help fix your marriages, what to look out for before you get married, and stuff like that. And yeah, so that's pretty much also what I'm working on right now. But anyway, continuing on. in whom ye also trusted, after that ye heard the word of truth, the gospel of your salvation, in whom also after that ye believed, ye were sealed with that Holy Spirit of promise. Ephesians chapter 1, verse 13. Receive the gospel. Receive truth. What does the seal of God mean? An intentional choice to follow Jesus in his truth all the way. Then, what is the mark of the beast in the forehead? It is an intentional choice to reject Jesus and his truth and to accept the words and the system of false worship, well, pretty much worship to Satan and the papacy, but it is false worship. False worship meaning you are not actually worshiping God. A lot of people who are deceived are likely going to think that they're worshiping God, but they're really worshiping Satan. So, false worship, in short. This is all a conscious decision. When will the MOB happen? When the Sunday law is enforced. I'm going to say it 2 more times so people get it in their heads, because many people, when they hear SDA and hear about Sunday law, they say, oh, if we're doing Sunday now, they're saying that no. When the Sunday law is enforced. When it is enforced. It has not been enforced yet, but according to prophecies that will be shown on this channel at a later time, show that this is a time that is about to happen, where a Sunday law will be enforced, and the mark of the beast will happen. Continuing on, and he brought me into the inner court of the Lord's house, and behold, at the door of the temple of the Lord, between the porch and the altar, were about 25 men, with their backs toward the temple of the Lord, and their faces toward the east, and they worshipped the sun toward the east. Then he said unto me, Hast thou seen this, O son of man? Is it a light thing to the house of Judah, that they commit the abominations which they commit here? For they have filled the land with violence, and have returned to provoke me to anger, and lo, they put the branch to their nose. Ezekiel chapter 8, verse 16 through 17. This is a conscious decision to turn your backs, just how they turned their backs from God's temple to look towards the sun. Many people will be having big decision time during the MOB crisis. And the Lord said unto him, Go through the midst of the city, through the midst of Jerusalem, and set a mark upon the foreheads of the men that sigh and that cry, for all the abominations that be done in the midst thereof. And to the others he said in mine hearing, Go ye after him through the city, and smite. Let not your eye spare, neither have ye pity. So here God is marking his people who are sighing and crying, who dislike the sins that are happening around them. And everybody that does not have the seal of God, yeah, they are awaiting the wrath of God, to say the least. Slay utterly old and young, both maids and little children and women, but come not near any man upon whom is the mark, and begin at my sanctuary. And remember, another word for sanctuary is house of God, and what house of God is talking about the church. So when it's talking about begin at my sanctuary, it's talking about the test of the mark of the beast crisis is first going to come to the SDA believers, and then the test will go out to all the world afterward. That's also for another study on prophecies and current events. Then they began at the ancient men which were before the house. Ezekiel chapter 9, verse 4 through 6. The ancient men represent the leaders. Why begin at the sanctuary? This is to signify the apostate leaders who teach falsely, the people who call themselves God's true people, even SDA, but are not. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause, that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And this should bring your mind right back to the book of Daniel. In the book of Daniel, you see God has his people there, including the 3 Hebrew boys. But what did most of people do? What did most of God's people do when Nebuchadnezzar put up music and a statue for people to bow down and worship, and threatened them with death, right? With that threatening of death and stuff, a lot of God's professed people bowed down to the image, but the 3 Hebrew boys stood up for God's truth and did not bow. They didn't even kneel down to look like that they were bowing, right? They did not bow. They stood up for God's truth, and they were threatened with death, and Nebuchadnezzar tried to kill them. And in the process, before the process of that, remember, and this is a very important thing that all of us should remember every day of our life, especially if we end up in that situation, in that type of situation, where one of the Hebrew boys said, and you guys can read this in Daniel, "The Lord will deliver us out of thine hand, but even if he doesn't do so, we will not bow down to your image." They refused to worship falsely, knowingly. They knew what the truth was, and they were willing to risk their lives for it, even if it meant them literally dying for it. And because they stood up for the truth, the Lord stood up for them. And so, in the process of what Nebuchadnezzar wanted to do to them, instead of them getting burned, the people who tried to throw them in got burned and they died. While God saved the 3 Hebrew boys through the fire, not from the fire, through the fire. And I'm wording it this way because many people believe that in the pre-tribulation nonsense that they don't need to go through the tribulation, but they'll be taken from the tribulation. Don't believe in that garbage, because that is not biblical. God is going to bring his people through the tribulation. Okay? I think I already have a video on this channel talking about that anyway. You guys can look that up, about the pre-tribulation nonsense that got debunked. I think that's also in the Understanding of the Nature of Man series. So yeah. Continuing with verse 16, "And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. And that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name." Revelation chapter 13, verse 15 through 17. "And I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on the Mount Sion, and with him 144,000, having his father's name written in their foreheads." Revelation chapter 14, verse 14. The father's name? We're about to get there. "And because ye are sons, God hath sent forth the Spirit of his Son into your hearts, crying, Abba, Father." Galatians chapter 4, verse 6. And how do you spell Sabbath? What name is in the word Sabbath? Abba. The Father's name is the seal, and that seal is in their foreheads. It's God the Father's name in the foreheads in the 144,000. Is the seal God's name? Yes. Now then, the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, "If any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation, and he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb." Revelation chapter 14, verse 9 through 10. What is the wrath of God? The 7 last plagues. Will the 7 last plagues destroy the earth? Yes. Saying, hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads. Revelation chapter 7, verse 3. The reception of the MOB is actually about the grieving of the Holy Spirit of God. And this picture will stop at, because it goes further a little bit, well, not a little bit, it goes a lot more into this. But this is the end of part 1, and I'll see you guys in the next one, by God's grace. See you later. God bless.